Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Please feel free to come a bit more forward. No danger today. It should be all right. And the doors will be closed any second now. We as supply chain in the global mobility, they always say, I don't like that much, but anyway, we as movers, DSPs, suppliers to the global mobility, we've had a bit of a rough time in the past 5-6 years, I would say. Remember COVID hit us, right? Right after that, you had a whole supply chain crisis and rising costs. We had war starting in the world, which was kind of terrible, of course. Last year, we had a revenue drop, I think, in the entire industry. So we've had a rough time, and on top of that, right now, we have the unknown impact of a changing US policy. We don't know yet how that will affect us, but we want to find out somehow today. And this is what the purpose of this panel. I must tell you as well, this is not a political panel. Politics are out of here. We're just looking at the impact of a changing environment. That's the most important thing. So if any of you have appetite for asking political questions, I'll have to stop you at that time, because we're not talking about politics. It's not our role. We're looking at impact on ourselves, on the economy, on our customers as well, likely. I'm joined by 5 people, kind of a variety over here. Laura Ganon from Fink, Cryne from CERC, Morgana of IM, John Seal of Hildrup, and Thijs from EY. Thijs De Beert from EY. Maybe you can present yourself in a couple of words,
Okay.
Laura?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Laura Ganon, the CEO of Fink Mobility in Brazil, and a proud past president of FIDI and LACMA.
Very good, thank you. Stephen?
Good morning, I'm Stephen Cryne. I'm the president and CEO of the Canadian Employee Relocation Council, mostly known as CERC. We're based in Toronto, and it's a pleasure to be here to share some thoughts and insights with you. We also have a conference every year. This year we'll be in Calgary, which is a beautiful place to visit. So I hope that some of you may make the trip. It's in September, so thanks for the opportunity to be with you.
Thank you, Stephen. Morgana?
Good morning, Morgana Summers, International Association of Movers. I'm the Director of Global Services and a proud past president of the FIDI 39 Club.
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. John?
Morning, I'm John Seal. I'm responsible for all business operations at Hildrup International, also a FIDI trainer and a member of the LACMA board currently.
Thank you. Thijs?
Good morning, I'm Thijs De Beert. I'm a director in the risk consulting practice, specialized in quality compliance and also third-party risk management. So I have a session tomorrow, already trying to have as many people in there as possible.
Wonderful. We're going to look at a couple of things today. The impact of what's happening right now has an impact on the economy, on trade, obviously, in the first place. It will have an impact as well on immigration and talent mobility, I would assume. Also on the supply chain itself. How do we adapt to this somehow? And finally, how do our customers, the end customers, the persons who are moving, how are they responding to what's happening right now? So I want to touch on the first one, the immediate impact perhaps on what we do. Just going to John perhaps as a mover there. Is there already some impact of that changing policy, the changing politics onto your business today?
Yes. We felt it strongly in the first quarter, and I think that you touched on it in the beginning. The word is uncertainty, and our customers are feeling that. When we ask our customers, how is this going to impact you and what can we expect this year, the answer tends to be, I don't know. We're in the middle of this right now, we're figuring it out. But we did see an immediate impact. We do a lot of government business, and there was a big impact immediately. USAID, that's obviously a big customer of ours, that being disbanded impacted us. And also bookings on the domestic side have been slower in the beginning, and I think a lot of it has to do with that uncertainty.
Yeah, that's for your customers. On the operations, is there any impact already or not yet?
Not yet on operations. We're currently looking for the opportunities that might come out of this that have nothing to do with household moving, and have found a few of those, but I think we'll touch on that later.
Yeah, okay. Laura, anything from your side?
I can repeat everything John said about the corporate customers. However, on the private sector, we haven't seen any decrease in volume yet. And I don't think there will be. So I think the private sector is still very important for us because it's not subject to all these tariff and policy changes in the big corporations. And on the DSP side, I think we've been seeing this trend already, but now even more of short-term assignments instead of long-term assignments.
Already,
so
yeah.
this is another thing that is positive somehow if you look at it and invest in it.
Thijs, from your perspective as an EY, I'm sure you guys have looked into this as well, and do you expect any short-term impact already on the economy? Will it take longer before this has an impact as a whole?
Maybe first looking at it from a little bit of a distance and also looking what is happening worldwide. I think it's clear that the world is shifting in a more protectionist mode. You can see that of all the votings that happened also in 2024, you can see a little bit of a shift to the right, a little bit of deglobalization. And obviously that has an impact. It also already, it is a bit of a feeling of taking back control, also a little bit linked to, for example, what we've seen in Europe with the Brexit, although different story, but still same feeling, the feeling of taking back control. So indeed, impact-wise, it does have an impact because it will have an impact on, definitely on the short term, lower mobility. It will have an impact supply chain-wise. There's going to be more disruptions because, for example, the process, immigration process, also at the borders, there's going to be more administration, more complexity. So there will be disruptions. So definitely also on a global side, there are some clear trends.
Jesse, if I can just
yes,
point in from, so Lara, we've actually been hearing a little bit different on the commercial side. We've been hearing a lot more of a freeze response because people just don't know what's going to happen. So they've stalled some of the global mobility, except for some things like John was talking about, evacuations, getting people out. And the other thing we're starting to see in the US, which is kind of interesting just in general, is a push towards almost stockpiling, kind of like we saw during COVID. Jesse, you were kind of saying before. You now hear adverts on the radio that'll be like, come buy this before the tariffs kick in. So I think that we could start to see that with, potentially wood or packing materials that we use in the industry, that there may be some sort of stockpiling because of all the uncertainty that John had mentioned.
Normally, very often, the moving business thrives when there's a crisis because people get out and afterwards they have to get back in again. So is this not an opportunity for movers?
We've seen some of that already. I think that when you get in situations like this, like you said at the beginning, we've been in crisis mode since 2020 of one kind or another. And when a crisis like this one happens, a crisis, whatever you want to call it, it's an emotional subject and people get emotional about it, you get angry. But you can either go outside and yell at the rain or you can just decide what you're going to do. Then, the rain's going to keep on falling, but you've just got to find out where you're going. And right now, one of the things that we've seen is a demand for warehouse space. As importers are trying to stockpile and beat the tariffs, we have seen an uptick in some of our markets up and down the East Coast where our warehouses are filling up with non-household goods. How much of that is related directly to these tariffs and a byproduct of that, I have no idea, to be honest. But there is demand for warehouse space, and we're focusing on non-household goods right now to weather the storm. So as a byproduct of this, or just the situation in general with household, it's pointing us in another direction to find new ways to weather the storm.
Stephen, sorry.
No, I was going to say to John, you said that since 2020, we've been in a crisis mode. But I can add that for me in Brazil, since 1924, when Fink was founded, we are in a crisis mode. So we just normalized it. Yeah. And things are going, you always learn how to look for the new opportunities that come from the crisis. And in our industry, there's always some new opportunities.
Never a dull moment in the industry, that's correct. Stephen, how is it affecting perhaps the DSP side of the business, which more your field, I believe?
Well, Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I just think back over the last 20-odd years that I've been associated with CERC. And I remember when, in 1999, we were afraid that all the planes were going to drop out of the sky because the clocks wouldn't turn forward. We had the dot-com crash. 2008, we had the financial disaster. 2014, we had the oil crash. I could go on. 2020, we had COVID, but we got through it. And when we were chatting about this, we were talking about adaptability and flexibility. So in my mind, there's kind of three things that you need to kind of put in your own vision, but also in the vision of your organizations. And that is one that there's hope that tomorrow is going to be better than today. You see challenges as opportunities, and you have the confidence to take those opportunities. So that's, I think, that's where we are again, and it's about reinventing the things that we need to do. And you've all talked. You are in the field. You're serving the clients, and you're doing that. You're adapting, and as you said, you're going to walk outside and say, "Oh, stop raining." It's not in your control. The tariffs and things that are going on right now are not in our control.
But we've seen that kind of disruptions before, like you said, a few years back when we had a supply chain disruption, which gave rising costs. So what have we learned from then that we now can mitigate against those risks, particularly, for example, in freight, which is still something that we don't know how that impact is going to be?
I think number one, diversify. This is key. I mean, this is not an option. The companies have to diversify. Diversify into DSP, immigration, but not just within our world of mobility, but also into fine arts, commercial cargo, construction, whatever. I think that when you have a company and you have people, when you have the technology, you have the means to find other things to do, and then when one is in crisis, the other one will be thriving maybe. And this is what kept Fink for all these 100 years. Mm-hmm. Always diversifying, always.
John?
I would say take the opportunity to really focus on your customers, because we have to remember that while we're going through these difficult times, our customers are as well. And if we're the best at what we do, and we're the closest to our customers, there's always going to be a seat at the table for us, no matter what the economic climate. So focus hard on the relationships that are going to help us in this room and around the world on how we can better assist our customers as they guide through these challenging times as well. I think that reinvestment in ourselves and tripling down on focusing on being the best will carry us through these tough situations, along with, obviously, diversification.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, maybe also picking up on that and also looking at other industries. I remember 10, 15 years ago, also the assignments we were doing, it was all about making processes as efficient as possible, as lean as possible, as cost-effective as possible, with just one clear flow, one clear supply chain, focusing on the one thing you're really good at. I think it's clear now in the last 5 years, maybe a bit longer, that that's no longer the best strategy. You need to build for resilience, you need to build for that you can cope with change. Business continuity is getting more and more important. So also, for example, there, I'm curious to hear what you're saying with the shift in use of warehousing. Was that a strategic choice, or was that something that just happened? Or
So it's something that just happened. Honestly, for us, it's pure economics. If our warehouses aren't full, we don't do very well. And if what we're traditionally filling with them with isn't working, then we have to actively go out and find new opportunities. So whether that's spurred by economic necessity or a crisis like this, whatever spurs it, I would encourage it, because there are opportunities out there outside of what we're used to doing and getting pushed. We've talked about comfort zones earlier this morning. Getting pushed outside of it, sometimes that's where the magic happens. Okay. And you can find whole new business lines that can end up surpassing some of the ones that you've been working on before.
And is it also the company culture enabling that, or?
Absolutely, it's company culture. It's direction from the top, sort of a Wild West mentality as far as it's results driven, saying, well, we've got to hit these numbers. Doesn't matter how or where it comes from. Keep an open mind. So that kind of mindset helps you in this situation.
So what are the expectations? We had a meeting with RMCs earlier this week, and we asked them the same question. What are the expectations? What's going to happen now the next few months, the next year? How do you budget? How do you talk to your customers about this? And the resounding answer was, we don't know.
Well,
Sorry?
I think a big part of the risk mitigation is your due diligence as a service provider, right? It is our responsibility as an industry to keep our customers informed of how policy changes are going to impact the move, how it's going to impact the person that is actually moving. So for me, this is a great time, I would say, to do due diligence in checking your quotes, checking your SLAs, checking your contracts, make sure that you wouldn't be stuck in a place where if freight rates go off the chart, or if RDDs, required transit times or anything like that goes out the window, that you're stuck paying fines, right? This is a really unstable environment globally. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So one of the biggest risk mitigations, I think, is just looking at your documentation and protecting yourself and making sure that you're doing smart business, not just business.
And Morgana, just there, I think there's a big opportunity because you can turn your company more into a consultant role for your customers than just a service provider. And also, you can look at niche markets and build these niche markets that will continue and try to work on wellness for the families they are relocating. You know, just be more concerned on a holistic wellness approach for the families instead of just moving the boxes or just saying these are the documents you need to provide.
Absolutely.
Thijs, does EY have a crystal ball and tell us what's going to happen in the next year?
Thank you.
I don't have a magic ball to know what's going to happen though. But I do like what Laura is saying. Also, we just also in our company, also seeing other companies and looking at strategies, you can see managed services popping up more and more. So we often have a term and then as a service, meaning that you're trying to take the burden away. And there also in the moving industry, it can be an opportunity. If complexity rises, if things are getting more and more complex, also on global mobility, obviously that's an opportunity.
Let's talk a little bit about immigration. And then it's not unique for the US that immigration policies are being hardened. It happens all around the world. How is that affecting expatriate movement? Do we see an impact already on that?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. We're seeing that particularly in a number of the countries that were, well, I'll give you, I'll use the Canadian example.
Please.
For the discussion, but the public attitude was up until about 12, 18 months ago, was very much in support of immigration because we realized as a nation with a stagnant birth rate, declining birth rate, the only growth in our labor force will come through immigration. And so the government of the day, opened the gates, probably a little bit too much, to the point where it impacted our housing, social services, and that in turn soured public opinion on immigration. We're not unique to that. It's happening all over the world. And I see that is going to be a challenge for our members, for our industry. Just the members of CERC are both the client, the corporation, to move their employees and the service providers. So we see it kind of from both sides. Yesterday we launched the coalition. And a big part of that work in the area that we need to focus on collectively is trying to change that narrative and drive the case that immigration is so important. And it's not immigration when we speak in, it's not necessarily permanent immigration. It's the movement of talent. It's that flow of talent, and we want to be able to move that talent as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can. We talk about red tape and improving digitalization at the border and things like that, and being creative in new visa streams. We have to do that, and I think it's incumbent on industry associations to make that case in our respective in our respective countries or regions. Immigration is vitally important to our economies. You look, I mean, Japan, Sweden, Ireland, all of these, the birth rates are flat, and that's the case around the world. The only area of the world that's seeing population growth is Africa for the next 30 or 40 years. China's fallen off, their birth rate has fallen off the cliff. India's done a fantastic job of looking at how they can mobilize their talent, and they're aggressively making agreements or finding agreements with other nations in order to move that talent around. They've just signed an agreement with Australia, for example.
Morgana, from a US perspective, how is immigration policy going to affect the influx of talent into the US?
I think that's a great question. I don't think I've got an answer to it. I'm going to try my best to not be political in this response.
Don't be.
Look, I think a lot of what is happening now, it's kind of right there with what's happening with the tariff. People don't know. We're getting all these horror stories on the news that are global. It's creating a lot of fear. As of right now, we are seeing some of our laws being followed, some that are being challenged. We're seeing it as there may be some pauses and really people taking a reflection if they feel like it is the right move for them at the time. But we're also starting to hear some things of there's so much destabilization happening globally, right? So somewhere like Germany or France or Spain, which traditionally would have been a very safe place to move to, a good experience for a young person, there's threat of imminent war. People are being said to, prepare for that. So there is just kind of this sort of fear that I feel like is out there because people don't know what the directions are going towards for what immigration policies are going to look like, as well as the stabilization once you become an immigrant of your status in the U.S.
So will it affect move volumes, you think, John?
Potentially. I mean, I think that right now, even if everything works out to a point where, a company does want to come in and open a new factory in the United States, it might give somebody pause right now to decide to move to the United States. And I think that there's kind of an intangible impact there that goes back to the uncertainty. We really don't know the total impacts right now. So we are just, to a certain extent, we're in wait and see mode. We're in operating mode of just having to, again, get back close to our clients and see how it shakes out. But we cannot. I do think it's impacting immigration. I talk to friends in this room, and they jokingly tell me that they're nervous to visit the United States right now because they might be stuck in customs. But there's truth behind the joke, and that gets my attention sometimes. As you think, okay, if somebody's jokingly nervous about even visiting the United States, what about moving?
Yeah.
Right now.
Let's shift to the supply chain a little bit, to the movers and the DSPs of this world and other providers to the global mobility. Are you feeling some pressure from your RMCs or corporate customers already in this respect, pressure on what you should change in order to adapt to the new situation? Are you feeling that already?
I feel I feel some pressure in terms of technology advancements, EDI, They want all the supply chain to stop retyping things, but I don't feel the pressure of changing something in what we do because of the new regulations in the U.S.
So not
U.S.
Right. So the EDI, etc., that was there already. That's not due to what's happening right now. Is that the same feeling elsewhere as well? No. Nothing new coming to your way. Is the supply chain robust enough to weather this?
I mean, it's interesting to think about that too. How it's going to have, we've always been such the younger child of the global supply chain, right? So. We've always had a shortage in truckers that potentially have been doing other sorts of distribution work, maybe lack of availability on shipping lines. So it's going to be interesting to see that if there really is a change in the way that consumption is made globally and we're not having as much traffic, will that free up truckers to maybe join our industry? Will that be kind of a good downfall? Maybe freight rates would drop. Maybe there will be lack of freight availability. I mean, it could really change the global supply chain in what people are doing for for the relocation industry, and it could have some opportunity in this crisis to open up and be somewhere that, you know, people are going to move. I'm a firm believer if people are going to move, and I think, Stephen, you talked about this a little bit with, a few years ago, you know, we're talking about the millennials. Millennials aren't going to move. They don't own stuff. They're tech people. Well, we've all had kids now, right? We've got stuff. We've moved, you know?
Right.
And those cycles are going to keep changing. I think human immigration, human movement is inherent, right? And it is required for talent. So I do feel like the industry will be resilient, but the way that we move might change.
Yeah.
And also I think there will be, and this I think we're going to see in the short term, regionalization. For instance, for Latin America, US has always been the first country we trade with, not only in our industry, but also in other industries. And what I think is that in the medium term, maybe short term, we will see Latin America dealing much more within Latin America and maybe Asia.
Yeah.
So is that a trend then, Thijs, that the globalization we've seen for the past decades, is that a turning point perhaps?
I think maybe it's mainly the reason for moving also that is changing, because we were talking about talent mobility, so we're seeing a lot more remote working, hybrid working, even workation, where you work somewhere differently than home and then combine navigation with work. I think that's definitely a trend that is going to stay. So also, for example, instead of in the past, a lot of the times for work you would take your whole family, all of your belongings, and then live there. There's now a lot more where instead of moving your whole family, like a bit more a hybrid model, more for short-term periods, or doing it partly remotely. So I see definitely there mobility going down a bit, but then on the other hand, there's going to be immigration and movements because of other reasons. For example, because of uncertainty, because of climate change, because of things like that. That's also obviously also mobility. So I see a change in reasons, but nevertheless, like you were saying, mobility is never going to stop, or people will be moving. Just the way they are moving is differently.
Yeah.
It's not like in the past where you would take a full container with you. So also there, it's about rethinking that model maybe a little bit.
Steve, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think we're seeing some undoing, if you will, of the thinking behind the tariffs. There's a softening. I know we don't want to get into a political discussion, but there is pressure within the administration to certainly ratchet back some of these things. And you know, let's hope, like I said at the beginning, you know, you hope for a better day. And that doesn't mean that we're just Pollyanna looking at that. I'm just it gives you a sense that, you know, there's some positive movement there. I want to pick up on the talent movement and the reasons that people move. Some of you may know that CERC, in partnership with Ipsos Public Research, about every 5 years we conduct an attitudinal survey about the willingness of people to move to different countries. So we're just in the process of publishing the 2025 edition, and I've had the opportunity to see some of the results. I do want to give a big shout out to Armstrong and to Eura. You've been incredible partners in making sure that we had the funding for that project to go forward. But a couple of insights that's kind of struck me as a little bit odd at this time.
When was the survey taken?
The survey was taken between the February the 11th and the 28th, so fairly current. 20 countries, 12,000 people, about their attitudes to move. We had we got a lot of questions in the survey that will be very helpful to our industry. You know, what are they looking for in terms of moving services, destination services, etc. A couple of striking things. We did ask the question, if you had the choice, what would be your number one destination? The US was still the number one destination, even though it was down 5 points from the last survey in 2017. And that's quite telling at this juncture. I don't know whether that number might change if we pulled it today, but you know, we need to keep our eye on those things. The number 2 destination was Switzerland. Okay. The UK was number 3. Canada slipped to number 4. And that is because the Canadian immigration system I will say it politically, it's at home, so I don't think I'm going to get into trouble. But our immigration brand has been tarnished over the last 12 months or so. So those are a couple of interesting findings. The other interesting finding is that 45% of people, doesn't matter what your employer is going to give you, they ain't moving.
45%?
Yeah, doesn't matter, right?
That's a big number.
I think it's between 40 and 45%, right? It's not a big shift from what we saw in 2017. But the fact is, and to your point, right, people are still going to move. So not all people are going to move. There's a certain percentage of the population that are going to move. Our members, your members, the clients that you serve, they are in need of top talent. 40% of them don't want to move. So you've got to be really selective in terms of, it's got to be, you're selecting the right people, you're providing them with the right services in order to ensure success.
Is there a risk that, until now, talent moved to the job? Is there a risk that the job will have to move to the talent?
Well, another interesting fact
when you start closing
out of the
borders
survey, another interesting fact was a large number, and I won't put a number on it because I can't remember what it was, but it was a key finding out of the report is that people want the opportunity for flexibility around that remote work. So yes, to your point, it's much easier to move the work to where the people are today. And we're seeing a lot of creativity in that place, in that space too.
So if that happens, if the job moves to the talent, who will win by this? Which countries will win by this?
I don't think any country is going to win by it. You still need people on the ground, right? You said that globalization, it's at risk. Right?
It goes from one side to the other. I think now we're moving towards deglobalization, towards protectionism. I'm sure that if we have this in 10 or 20 years from now, it might be that it's starting to move another way again.
Yeah, because it goes like this.
It goes in cycles.
Yeah, I'm optimistic that it doesn't hit that trough, right? You're still going to need global supply chains. You're still going to need always, right?
I mean, just to kind of jump in there. So I don't know if anybody saw that. California itself is the 4th largest economy in the world. California itself, right? And if you look at what tech's done there, that is so much talent from around the world, right? That they're bringing maybe short-term, maybe long-term, maybe it extends, right? But I think for a while we kind of looked at that like, what are they building these crazy buildings for where you can get free lunch and you have a gym and all these perks? But to that point where we've seen post-COVID that relocation policies have gotten slimmer, they're trying to be more economical, it is that question on the personal level, what is the incentive for me to move, right? Why should I move? Are you going to pay for my schooling? Are you going to pay for my housing, right? So maybe relocation companies are going to have to become more creative with making the package more alluring. And not only that, it's from the other side of just coming to a place that is exciting to be in, right? And I think that we lost some of that a little bit with the working from home, but that still has the flexibility, right? So it's like you're asking all of these things of a person and trying to hit all these requirements. And I think also traditionally going on assignment overseas kind of meant you were going to get a promotion when you came home, right? That was kind of the underlying, if I take this job over there, when I get home, I'll get a promotion. And some of the remote work has also kind of changed that because people are able to showcase those talents in a different way. So I think it's kind of the same as moving. Relocation is going to have to change. Those packages are going to have to be more alluring to get that 45% to, 60%.
Yeah.
So John, if the policies are changing, relocation policies are changing, what can moving companies or supply chain, what can we do then to make sure that we are resilient and that we arm ourselves against those changes?
Again, get close to the customers and really focus on being the best that we can be for them. We have to understand what our customers need of us, and we touched on it, focusing on helping them to guide them with relocation policies or else just best position them for success. And I don't know that, there is a war for talent, but I think that the current tariffs, there's two different groups of industry that this is impacting. You've got the tech, you've got finance, you've got those things that can be done anywhere that's set up for it. There's also industry. and there are people where you have to have people in plants and people on the ground. And that's something that, we're still in the waiting game on, but as far as our, and to see what's going to happen. But as far as preparation, I mean, we just have to focus on being close to our customers, understanding what they need from us.
I totally agree with you, but I also think that we need to look inside. Because if we're going through a rough period, and people are scared. People are scared now, and the power outage in Spain and Portugal yesterday didn't help anything, and then there were fake news about the possible war and problems between Russia and whatever. So people are scared. And we need to make sure that our companies are also prepared to the difficult times. So I think we need to look at our partners, make sure we're dealing with partners that we know are stable companies with solid financial proven background. I think this is super important. And how do you keep your talents? You need to keep your talents while you don't have the same volume. So again, diversification is key. So you can navigate your talent from one division to another and keep them for the bright future ahead that we all want to believe will come back. And also, I think that you need to modernize. Technology is here to stay. And I have to praise FIDI and EY because I think for the small and medium companies, especially family-owned companies that are, more traditional, FAME is a roadmap to doing that. So I think it's very important that the companies, the FIDI members, look at FAME as a very low-price consultant that we all can have to help us modernize our companies, instead of like, oh, here comes this auditor checking what I do.
Thijs must be very pleased to hear that EY is low price. That's
well, low price because we share between everybody.
Okay, but even maybe picking up on, because you mentioned FAME and your question on how can you prepare yourself.
Yeah.
I think the way, the FAME mentality, the preparation, the documenting, the making a process also helps if there's a lot of legislative changes, there's changes every day. So you should start with think about how can we capture those changes and make sure those changes are translated in our systems. Also, if you have to go through customs, also if, for example, if there's changes on tariffs on household goods, how are we sure we're capturing these, getting these information? So also there, thinking about processes and maybe even something that also FIDI as an organization or the FIDI office can help with.
So in your capacity as an auditing company of FAME certified companies, have you seen a change in business concept in the past, not in the past few months because that's too soon, but in the past years of crisis that we've had one after another? Have you seen a change already? Are they pivoting towards another business model, or is it still the same old?
Maybe I can now even make a link to the financial assessments. So also there so we're publishing every year a consolidated report on all of the financial assessments we did. And I think a trend or something that we clearly are seeing is that solvency is quite good, meaning that there's a good backbone, but we do see that profitability is a bit at risk.
That's not new though, huh?
It's definitely not new, but then knowing what is going on, knowing that potentially volumes will get lower, I think you definitely have to do something. I think taking no risk is the biggest risk at all, potentially.
So the risk is to create buffers, to look at your pricing models, or to diversify or whatever?
Absolutely, because if there's a risk that is the same for everyone, it could potentially be an opportunity for you if you react differently.
But there's no completely changing business models yet that you see happening in the moving companies in the past 3, 4, 5 years?
What I already mentioned, like the being resilient and being open and have a bit of a culture also where you can move quickly with changes. So not trying to focus on that one thing, but keeping a clear eye. So that's definitely we see at more successful organizations.
At the risk of sounding a bit ridiculous, but if you look into where we are today, where is this industry going to be in 5 years?
It's going to be different.
Yeah, we ask ourselves
We
that.
don't know.
I know, but trying to
But it's
imagine
going to be
something
different.
different.
It's going to be different.
In a positive way or
You're
negative way?
asking the mobility industry or the moving industry?
The supply chain industry to the mobility.
I think that there will be much more revenue in the DSP arena, immigration, because consultant services on immigration will be more required with all the more difficult immigration policies in some countries, and more DSP, short-term assignment services, will also be required. I do think that the moves will get smaller and smaller, and the volumes will also fall, because technology is helping this. Technology is helping, and the press on costs for every industry in the world. So all the big corporations have a pressure to lower their internal costs. And relocating people is costly.
And so-
Not only because of the move, but because of the whole thing.
John?
Well, I was going to say it's going to look much different 5 years from now, because there's another massive crisis in the middle, not to change the subject completely, but the largest customer in the world is in the process right now of, it's essentially at war with the industry, you know, with the U.S. military and the GHC contract. However that shakes out, it's going to be different 5 years from now, dramatically different, which is why we're already looking towards a world where we do a lot less household goods moving as a large, you know, we're on top of being an international company, we're a large domestic mover as well. So we've already gone down the road of saying, you know, take out the biggest customer in the world out of the equation. What do we look like without that, and how do we gear towards that in the future? And that's opened our eyes to a lot of other things that are out there, kind of almost right under our noses, and we're starting to pick those up.
Morgana, 5 years from now?
I
What
think
will your membership look like in 5 years from now?
it's going to be huge. We're going to have 10,000 members globally.
It's not the question, what will they look like?
They look like probably a lot of bags under their eyes. I think, you know, diversification, that's what we've heard throughout this conference, speaking to people around the world. Everybody's diversifying, and we had an interesting conversation with somebody yesterday, and they kind of compared it to the book industry, and I thought it was actually a really good comparison, right? So if you think back to our days of Barnes & Noble, where it was like a thing to go to a bookstore and buy books, and then that kind of went away with Amazon and the Kindle, and now it's back. It's back in a different way that's like trendy. They've reinvented themselves to these cute coffee shop spaces. They're doing all this online stuff, and I really think that that's what is going to happen with our industry. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to sell differently. I think our sales tactics are going to be different, that maybe we're not selling moving. And Lara was right on that point of, we're selling the experience. We're selling why it's a good idea to move and how we're going to take care of you during that move process. And I think that the way that things were traditionally done is just going to be kind of a thing of the past, and we're going to have to be reinvented in a smarter, funner, more attractive way. And not as maybe laborious as before. The other thing that I think we suffer with in our industry is just, you know, talent. We talked about retention. We talked about talent globally moving, but, you know, attracting and retaining talent. I mean, I'm sure that we could go around this room, and if anybody knew of what global mobility was or what moving was before they joined the industry, they were probably born into it. Otherwise, you stumble and fall into it, right?
True.
So I think that's something that we're trying to work on at IAM. We have a global mobility foundation now that is working on the workforce in total and partnering, just like the coalition is, with a lot of different associations to really get the word out that this is an industry that can be very attractive, that is diverse, right, and that is dynamic. And, you know, something we didn't touch on too much either is, you know, the DEI and what's going on right now with those policies. We've seen some pressure. You know, that is also another concern of, you know, where is DEI going to be? And right now we see it as, you know, at IAM we've got a code of ethics that says we welcome everybody from every diversity background, and I think that that's going to stay in this particular industry. We can have a really good attraction because we have this wonderful bubble of, you know, attracting and respecting
It's embedded in our
cultures.
industry, isn't it? Yes.
It's definitely in the culture. Two things, and I wasn't being flippant when I said it's going to be different. It is going to be different, and a couple of points. You spoke about the experience that you provide, the service that you provide. You're not just loading a truck and taking people's stuff, you know, their belongings. You're actually touching some of the most intimate parts of their lives. You know that. The memories, the kids, you know, the sofa that the dog died on, all of those things, right? And you can't take that away. So the volumes are going to go down, but the demand for that experience is going to go, I think is going to continue to increase. And that's where the opportunity is. And the example of the bookstore is really good. I mean, we've got a chain in Canada, and every time I go in there, it's packed, right? With young people too, young people that, you know, they want that experience of opening a book. We're not here to talk about books, but the survey that I spoke about, the survey that we're releasing, top factors, the experience of the move. That is really important to people. Just as important, and this was the first time we asked the question, was the culture that they were moving into from a DE&I perspective. 74% said that was a factor in their decision, would be a factor in their decision to relocate. So people are looking for that. That's what they want. And we have to ensure that we can continue to provide it. I think that's what the future looks like.
So to comply with the demands of coming from the US in respect of DEI, do we just change the word then?
You said that we wouldn't get political.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm doing impact. We're looking at impact.
Well, I think it is. I think, you know, it's an impact. It is an impact. And I'm not in the US. I don't read it daily. I don't live it.
For us, I think you call it something different. I mean, DEI is, if you break it down to its most essential form, it's just good leadership. You know, if you have a good, strong culture, if you're a strong leader, DEI takes care of itself. So you don't have to call it that to live it and have a situation where everyone feels comfortable, anyone can move up. A merit-based organization that is inclusive and nobody feels left out, that's good leadership. And I think that if you focus on that, DEI should take care of itself.
Yeah, and there's big example. There's huge examples of that.
Thijs, 5 years from now, still auditing companies, some way remote or not remote. Considering that moving businesses, and like the DSP business even more, have a relatively small revenue. They're small businesses. The average was about $5 million, I believe, average revenue of a mover.
5, 6.
DSPs will be even less. How easy is it for them to pivot towards a new world and in 5 years?
Yeah, so indeed, and your question before was also how will it look like in 5 years? One of the trends I do also believe is that there's going to be more consolidation of the markets, either real consolidation, meaning mergers or takeovers, but you also have consolidation in a way of working more intensely together. So that's also another way of consolidation. So I do see that if you're living by yourself on an island, that won't work anymore. You need to be connected. That's also why organizations like FIDI are perfect to stay connected, work together, and then try to grow together. So also for the smaller organizations, I think that's also where they need to look at, because if things are getting more complex and you're a small organization, you don't have the room for a lot of lawyers or a lot of people on the side doing investigations. So that the only thing you can do is try to work together and try to form synergies.
So there is a role for associations, like you kindly said for now, for FIDI, for IM, for Jura, for Omni, there's a role there. What role will that be? Will that change? Will that pivot, you think, Morgana?
Look, this week being together with all the delegates that are here, I think this is proven fact, right? This is what it's about. It's about connecting face to face. It's about dispelling those fears, like Laura said. Everybody's watching the news. It's about talking through it, making plans, that collaboration. It's so important. I can't imagine a better time for putting this coalition together, because we're going to have a lot of topics to discuss and move forward as an industry. For us, at IAM, we are really focusing on trying to bring a real-time experience in a world that is overloaded with information. So we're focusing on real-time supply chain management, on real-time informational news, so that you can have a reliable source that can hopefully be passed on to your customers from that customer view to help back up and tell the story that you were hearing of how the industry is impacted. And I think that's the best that we can do in this uncertainty. But connecting with people, most important.
Okay. Yeah. I want to leave some room for questions as well, but just for now, one piece of advice. I think you said it right, but one piece of advice for the international relocation industry, particular moves and DSPs.
Diversify, diversify, and diversify.
Okay, that's 3. Thank you so much. Stephen?
I think it's agility, flexibility. You touched on it as well. And that's invest in your people. Now is the time to invest in the good people that you've got. Many companies, anytime things get bad, what's the first thing that goes? Training, investment, people out the door. And then when the market comes back up, oh, we can't find people, right? So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Morgana?
I think connect. One of my recent mentors said, if you connect with people, you'll find that we're more similar than we are different. And I think that's huge, says it all.
That's what we're doing today, right?
Yeah, exactly.
John?
Focus hard on your customers, do what they need you to do, and focusing on your people and all, and tech and being agile, all of those things are what you need to do to be able to give your customers what they want.
Thijs?
Yeah, I believe be open to change. Don't only stick to what you have, but be resilient and be open to it.
I want to say one thing.
Okay.
I was thinking about what FIDI could do to navigate, to help the members navigate these difficult times. And I couldn't think of anything. And otherwise I would have called you. So I asked ChatGPT what an association like FIDI could do to help the members. And I asked the question. And it came with a list. And I checked one by one. And all of them FIDI is doing. So, well done.
That's good.
Okay. On that note, I want to open the questions. Anybody has any questions? Is there a microphone around somewhere? They're coming over. Yes, Mark, as always, will have a question. Mark Oakshott. Thank you, Mark, for doing that.
Yeah, I have a question relative to the RMC model or RMC companies. Obviously, particularly the larger RMCs are badly wounded right now. I'm interested in the panel's view of what the RMC model looks like in the future and whether that presents sales opportunities for the moving industry.
Who wants to tackle that one?
I mean, I think I can start with it. I think John brought it up a little bit, and if you look at what's going on with the military right now, and they're trying to single source, which is essentially make one RMC to handle it all, and then industry is combating that, and it's not kind of a realistic model. So to me, if you look at that and you look at what RMCs have done now, it's never more important that RMCs need to be really connected with their supply chain and on the same page and selling the same product, right? It's a collaboration. It's not a battle. So I think that really looking at that partnership will, if an RMC, I guess, looks at that partnership, it'll navigate the way that RMC will be sustainable.
Is deglobalization then an opportunity? Perhaps then the RMC model, the global RMC model, will be a bit under pressure, no?
I mean, yeah, I think that it's a downfall from all of us. But again, I think that we kind of talked about making that package attractive, right? And that's part of the RMC's job too. I mean, they're the ones that are kind of saying, I'm selling you this single source, easy way to move. So it's going to be a difference in how the sales are approached and how you're really selling the reasons to move.
So much like the supply chain, the RMC will have to change.
Yeah,
in that
I think
model.
so.
I think they'll find new opportunities in their markets too, right? And there will be consolidation.
More consolidation. Yeah. Bigger even.
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay. Good. Is that answering your question, Mark?
Sure,
Yeah.
No, I'm just interested to
Any other comments on that?
sense of opportunity rather than
Yeah, maybe.
my concern for the RMC.
Talking about opportunities, one terminology or one concept we see more and more popping up is skill-based organization, which means that instead of having the old model where you have your tasks and then try to find the people, it's also thinking about what skills do I need in my organization, also think for the future, what skills will I need in 5 years, in 10 years. Could also be an opportunity as an organization to play on that need, help the need of helping organizations of having the right skills and even go global and help them look for those needs instead of just relocation management, more and more the whole end-to-end.
And Mark, maybe I'm being naive, but right now RMCs really treat us difficultly, if that word exists, let's say. And maybe because of their difficulties right now, because the market is smaller, they might feel the need to rely more in their supply chain and maybe support a little bit better their suppliers instead of just putting a lot of pressure, not paying in a timely manner, not putting so much pressure in the price, to make sure that their supply chain will remain strong despite the difficult
But the
times.
pressure the supply chain is feeling is the same pressure that they're feeling from their corporate
That's
clients.
exactly it, right?
It's very much the same.
Comes from the corporate.
Yeah.
And the expectation, so the corporates are trying to shrink the budget. The expectations of the employee are still, and they're growing, you know? So they will have to find new ways of dealing with that, whether it's technology.
And prove value somehow.
Improve value somehow, and that's where
It
wanna
really
get.
comes back to what you said, right? It's being in touch with your customers and developing those relationships and understanding what their challenges are, needs are, and working together
Okay.
to try to solve them.
Derek?
Yeah, hi, great job, guys. Great panel, super great content. Thank you so much. Just picking up on Mark's question, is the opportunity more around a direct relationship with RMCs and sort of corporates and the supply chain as opposed to the RMC in the middle? There's obviously points there to be had. And is that cost savings, that pressure of cost savings coming down from the corporate world, is there more room for direct relationships? Is there any trend there? It's probably an open question to the group, I would say.
The question is, are there relationships to be built?
Are there relationships to be built, and is there an opportunity for direct relationships? Yeah, that's.
But maybe there's nobody around any longer. When we had globalization, all those HR mobility departments regionally disappeared. Can they be built up again so that you have someone to speak to?
Well, and that's part of the challenge. And that's, again, you know, that's something that I think, I see Anna Pam sitting in the audience as well from WERC. That's something that the associations need to do. This is not a transaction. We're talking about the best and the brightest, and you want to hang on to them. So the corporate side needs to treat global mobility in a more strategic way. And then the budget, you know, if they look at it from that perspective, the budgets may not be under the scrutiny that they are.
I hope they will hear you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
You know, we're trying to do that.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of our, you know, the mandate of the coalition talks about education, it talks about research, it talks about advocacy. So when you mention advocacy, of course, people think, okay, well, that's a government relations. You know, they're going to lobby government. But no, we have to educate and advocate for the value of this industry.
Yep.
I mean, Derek, to your point, I think any smart person that is doing business with a customer, and it just ties it all in together, when you see your customer is wavering, and you see that they are doubting or they are complaining, the smartest move is to reassess, find where the pain points are, right? See what the expectations are, reset those, and bring value to the table. And we all know that movers are, I wouldn't say the most valuable, but a huge part of what makes that relocation successful. So maybe it's an opportunity for us to get back to the table a bit more than we have been.
You are where the rubber hits the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, our role in that is to support the RMC in their relationship with the client, to show them this is why it costs what it does, this is who we are.
Any other questions?
Yes, over here.
Anna Pam.
Here, right here.
Oh, sorry.
Bit of a different question or a different topic, but your survey actually, Stephen.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, of
please?
course.
Thank you.
Better now. Survey you mentioned actually caught my attention because I do think it's important. We're often in our own bubbles, our own companies, you know, we're in our own echo chambers. I think it's super important and interesting that you spoke to 20K people, you said?
20 countries, 12,000 people.
12,000. And the comment that caught my attention was you said the participants said that the experience of the move is very important to them. And my question now is, as the generation, you know, go younger and younger, even I already see now, I'm 30 now, if I talk to the generation under me, I see how different they are to me. And I can imagine the generation above, so towards 40, 50, 60, they wanted a different experience. So if I speak to, let's say, a 60-year-old or 50-year-old, what they deemed as important during their move is already different to what I deem important, and maybe even different to what the 20-year-olds deem important. Yeah. So my question was, and also I think you, John mentioned, it's important to keep service-oriented and actually keep your end customer in mind. So my question now is to your survey, was there a follow-up question to what they actually mean when they say the experience is important? And as maybe in 5 or 10 years, how all of you or kind of, let's say, keep in the loop or actually understand what is important to the 30-year-old, what is important to the 20-year-old, looking at technology, how do they actually want their move, and also on a corporate level, what do they think is important? Because it's an open question. Of course, I know subjectively what would be important to me, but I think it's so important to keep per market and per country in mind what actually is relevant in the experience for the coming generation.
There's a lot in that question.
Yeah, sorry.
So let me try and unpack that pretty quickly. The survey looks at the demographics, so it looks at the industry, it looks at the age, the sex, the location, and so we will be tracking some of those things. We've got a number of questions that ask around, you know, the type of service, so whether it's the moving service, the BSP services, the importance of education, assistance and schooling, etc. So we will be tracking the changes that we observe within the demographic and trying to tease some trends out of that. I'm in the baby boom, maybe you guessed that, I'm not sure, but I can tell you that I bet my expectation is probably not much different than a 30-year-old in terms of wanting that experience, that flexibility, and being taken care of, and knowing that I matter. Those are fundamental things that we all want, regardless of age, I think, right? So,
something else to add to that is that I think that our investment in FIDI 39, those clubs, you know, across the associations, to make sure that we're not. It's not just the same people from our organizations returning to these events year after year, being close to our customers, that we have a constant flow of new next generation people into our organizations, because you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you have to have people who can identify with our client base, who is also, you know, spans the spectrum of age. So that's why it's important to invest in our people, what Laura was talking about earlier. And FIDI 39 and those organizations are huge for that. They're critical.
And to that point, I want to just repeat something that you may have heard yesterday. Investing in young people is important, yet during a crisis like we have last year, we see training investments going down, specifically in the young people level. Yep. The top level, they get the training, they're doing fine, but in the lower level, much less. And that is kind of shocking, I would think. Right. So here's a call to action. Anupam, yes?
Thank you. Switch gears a little bit. I'm curious to hear, especially from the moving companies on there, there's no discussion at this point, for good reason probably, but you know, Thijs talked about solvency being pretty good in the industry at this point. What is your point of view on automation? Whether it's in the warehouse or it's autonomous vehicles, is there any investment you're seeing happen in that space within the industry, and or the outlook over the next 5 years, perhaps?
I think digital inventories for sure. tracking tools, management, very good technological systems. These are all very important, and I think most of the companies are doing that right now, I hope. But I had one funny experience in our company that in the fever of modernizing, I was convinced to try chatbot for us, for our customers to interact. And it was horrible. The experience couldn't be worse because the customers wanted to talk to us. And we had only 2 questions before the human would pick up the phone. And just these 2 questions, the customers complained. And I don't know, maybe I lost some private customers because of those 2 questions. But the ones that they wanted Fink, they know Fink, they wanted a reliable company, and they waited, they were not happy. So of course I cut it immediately. So I think that internally, yes, smart companies will use technology, invest in technology to streamline, to modernize, and have less costs.
Operationally, I would agree with you. On the customer relationship, no, for various reasons, and not because our customers are difficult, but also because the very nature of what we do.
Exactly.
It's not just chairs that we move, like you said, we move someone's life. It's personal. It gets into the DNA of a mover that you're talking about persons. And a household good move in a container is worth nothing on the market, except for the person who it belongs to, because it's personal goods.
One photograph.
Absolutely, but the value of that is, can't even estimate that. So it's personal stuff. People want to talk to a person when it's about personal stuff. It's not an iPhone you buy or glasses or whatever. It's about personal stuff. They want to talk to a human being. I'm convinced of that. But you're right, automation, I think movers are doing a lot of automation already in their warehouses, done almost everywhere. So a lot of stuff is happening. I don't see a robot pack a chair yet. And that will take some time before we're there. But maybe, John, anything that you can add to that as a mover?
No, you know, one of the things that we're looking at is just trying to remove costs where you can on basic functionality. You know, there's a lot of stuff coming forward from an AI standpoint that might help you. It might help you respond to an email the way you think you want it. You would respond to that normally. So we're looking at some of those things, and you know, obviously you have to. There's a lot of vetting to do before you go down the road with something like that. But yes, we're looking at all of those things.
Yeah, and what also helps, instead of having just the chatbots, is maybe help AI to help the person that is talking to the customer. So analyzing what has been the request so far, what type of person is this based on the conversation, what do we need to know, so that there's support for the person talking to the customer.
I think the forecasting you're talking about, Thijs, could be revolutionary for the planning of our industry, right? To really be able to get that internal data, to have insight into what should I really expect this summer, how do I hire, what kind of assets do I need? I mean, that could be really revolutionary if we start to use those tools smartly internally, for sure.
Good idea for a training course.
There we are, another training course is born.
Some work for Justin.
Any other questions? Okay, we stumbled through this without having incidents on politics, which is fantastic.
1 minute.
Thank you very much for being there, for attending. Thank you for our panel. Do come back for any other business sessions we will have. We have one on netting in half an hour, one on sustainability as well in half an hour in 2 separate rooms. So feel free to pop in. But otherwise, I think there's coffee right now and sunshine out there. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.